Okay, what we're going to do today is step through a brief demonstration of the IRONSCALES platform. If there's any questions coming from this, please reach out to your local IRONSCALES representative and we'll be sure to answer those questions for you. Okay, what we're going to do, what I'll do is I'll first start out, I'll give a high-level overview of how we're different between what you might be familiar with in terms of traditional email security technologies or products, and then we'll go into a demonstration. So firstly, how we're different. Well, we are, first of all, the main difference between the IRONSCALES platform and anything else that's out there is we are not an inline solution. So there's no MX records to be changed, no transport rules that need to be modified or created. In fact, in terms of email flow, there's no changes made whatsoever. We are an API-based solution, so we're connected via API directly to the email service, whether that's Office 365, G Suite, or Exchange. And secondly, the second major difference is we're connected. We're actually connected at the mailbox level, and being connected at the mailbox level gives us certain advantages. So what we're hearing from customers or prospects, anybody that we speak to, what we're hearing from them is that regardless of the email security technology that they may have deployed in their security stack, certain kinds of emails are still making it to the inbox, right? So this drives us philosophically to say, you know what, seeing as these certain types of sophisticated attacks are making it past these technical controls or these filters, well, that drives us to the mailbox level, right? So we are a post-email delivery solution. Basically, what happens when emails land in the mailbox, we get a notification via the API. So again, post-email delivery solution, and we're connected via API. So let's talk about what we do. Well, being connected at the mailbox level gives us some advantages over and above, the gateway level technologies that are out there. One of these advantages is because we're seeing every mail that lands in the mailbox, whether that's an internal email or an external email, we're able to build up this behavioral profile that basically describes or helps us understand each individual mailbox user's behavior in terms of how they interact with their email. And so this behavioral profile then gives us context around every single email that lands in the mailbox and helps us determine whether that email makes sense as to how they interact with their email. So let's take a look at this in a little more detail. Basically what happens if you take a look at this email here from Brendan, this email landed in the mailbox, and of course what we do, as you would expect us to do, the very first thing that happens when a mail lands in the mailbox is we will do a quick inspection for any malicious content, so malicious attachments or URLs. And of course, if we find any malicious content at any point in time during any of our scans, if we find any malicious content, we'll immediately remove the email. But the next thing that we do, in this case, this email lands from Brendan in my mailbox. We did that quick inspection for malicious content. There is none. So then it's on to the next step. Now what we do is we compare this email, the metadata around this email, with the context that we get from that behavioral profile. And so the system understands then from that Brendan is a trusted sender of mine. And therefore we look at this email to say, does this email make sense? Does it look like a normal email from Brendan? And in this case, it does, right? So it's business as usual. The end user can get on with their life. So what we do, however, if we do discover something suspicious about this, remember that malicious content, the email will automatically be removed. But if there's suspicious content or the email itself is suspicious, then what we'll do is we'll alert the end user to this by the use of banners. Now, most folks are familiar with banners. The one we're probably the most familiar with is a static banner that goes on every email that comes from outside the organization. And it might say something like, caution, external sender, that kind of thing. And so that's a decent first step. However, what that static banner doesn't do is it doesn't differentiate between legitimate external emails and suspicious external emails. So let's say I have communication with one of my suppliers, and every email that comes from that supplier might have that caution external email banner on it. Now, if somebody at some point then impersonates that vendor and starts sending me emails, impersonating that supplier of mine, those emails will still just have the same banner. They'll still just say caution external sender. So that doesn't, as I say, doesn't differentiate between legitimate emails and suspicious external emails. So what we do is we stay out of the way until we detect something suspicious. And when we do, as I say, we'll inject a banner into it. So take a look at this. This email here, for instance, this is one of those emails that makes it through to the inbox. This is a non-signature based email, or what we call a fileless attack, right? There's no links, no attachments in here. So this thing is making it through whatever protections we have in place, and it lands in the mailbox. It's also very well targeted, right? So it's from somebody impersonating Adam, our VP of sales, targeted directly at me. So what we do is we insert this banner to say we think this is an impersonation attempt. Why? Because again, Adam is a trusted sender of mine, but this email is coming from an address that we don't normally associate with Adam. So there's a number of different use cases of this, but we're injecting these banners into the email to alert the end user to the fact that there's a suspicious anomaly here, and the end user now needs to take action. So there's a number of different use cases, as I say. There's domain lookalikes. So for instance, we're looking for things that look like our domain, right? Or the protected domain, ironscales.com. This is a domain lookalike. This does not say ironscales.com. But imagine the average end user without this red banner. How hard would it be for them to, they're just trying to do their job. How hard would it be for the average end user to detect that doesn't say ironscales.com, right? It's a domain lookalike. This in fact is IRONSCALES.com, which could be a legitimate domain. Again, DMARC. A lot of folks think DMARC protects against this. DMARC does not. DMARC is actually protecting against exact brand spoofing. So DMARC would protect us against somebody spoofing ironscales.com. DMARC does not protect against domain lookalikes like this or cousin domains. So again, different use case. We're also detecting exact spoofs. So Eyal Benishti, he's our founder and CEO. This is his email address, so I won't waste your time by asking you to see if you can see anything wrong, because there isn't anything wrong. But again, this is one of those classic business email compromise emails. Lands in the mailbox. Again, Eyal, we know what Eyal's, because of that behavioral profile, we know what emails from Eyal look like, and this is not one of those, based on any number of reasons. Perhaps mail servers used, perhaps number of hops, or so on. There's something suspicious about this email. We think it's an impersonation attempt, and so again, we inject this banner. So a number of different use cases there. But that's basically what these banners go towards. Is they go towards the first of two main goals that we have at IRONSCALES. The first goal is, as we said earlier, right? Given that these certain kinds of emails are landing in the mailbox, our first goal is to help the end users detect that these emails are there, and we do that through the use of these banners. So that's goal one. Goal two is that when we have an email in the mailbox, our second goal is to help the security team respond to this incident as quick as possible. Right? What we hear from customers again is that the process that the security team have to go through when one of these emails is eventually detected in a mailbox in an organization, the process that they go through to both analyze, investigate that email, and then if they determine they need to remove it, the process that they need to go to for that incident response is not a good one, right? It's typically a very manual process. It's writing PowerShell scripts to sweep through mailboxes. it's extracting the links and attachments manually, it's pulling out the headers and analyzing those. We want to make all of that go away and help the security team respond to this incident as quick as possible. So first thing we do is we give the end user a reporting button. This button, in the case of Office 365, this button, there's nothing to be installed on the end station. This is actually a little XML file that gets pushed out from Office 365. So the idea being, have them press the button. Now then we start the process. This is optional, by the way, but we give the end user the ability to communicate with the security team, right? Why did I find this email? Why am I reporting this email? What do I think? Well, I think this one is an impersonation attempt. I got the banner, so let me press the reporting button, and I get immediate feedback to say it's been reported successfully off to the security team. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll move this email over so you can still see it in the background, but I'll move over to the dashboard. Here you can see that email in the background there, and you can see that this email now has shown up in the dashboard automatically. So let's talk about that. Notifications. When an incident shows up in the dashboard, we obviously don't expect you to be sitting in front of this dashboard all day long. So how would you get notifications? Well, we support a number of different methodologies there. We support log forwarding to a SIM, for instance. We have SIM integration. We also support email alerts. So as soon as an incident shows up in the dashboard here, we could send out alerts to the to an email security alias, something along those lines. But another thing that we've done is we've also created an IRONSCALES app. And what this app will do, so as soon as the end user presses that button, as soon as that incident shows up in the dashboard, we support an app for a mobile device, so both for iOS and Android, and you'll get push notifications on your mobile device. So right away, that incident would pop up here with the push notifications. You can press on this incident notification here on the push notification. It will then open up a mobile version of this dashboard. So you can see here, this is basically, we've got all of the features that are here in the dashboard you have on the mobile device as well, including our 3 quick response buttons. So we'll get to that here shortly, but basically all of the info that you're being presented in the desktop version of the dashboard, you have available to you on your mobile device. So now you can respond to these incidents immediately without being tied to your desk. And this, we're finding great feedback from our customers that are using this. It allows them to respond, as I say, perhaps they're out at lunch, on their way home, on the train, something like that. Very, very good feedback. So let's move over back to the dashboard here, and let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this incident. So our goal here, again, is to help the security team respond to this incident as quick as possible. So as soon as that end user pressed that reporting button in their email client, we initiate this AI-powered incident response engine. And the goal, again, is to offload all of the analysis and the forensics tasks off the security team to basically allow them to make a quick decision. So first thing here, you'll see a prediction or confidence level from Themis. Themis is our virtual security analyst, and she's giving us an analysis of what she thinks of the email itself. Okay, so she's analyzed the email. She's giving us a confidence level as to what she thinks the classification of this incident should be. Now, I will speak to where she gets her smarts. I'll speak to all of that here in a little while, but just for now, let's just understand that Themis is giving us a prediction, or she's giving us a verdict as to what she thinks of the email itself. So, quick verdict of the email. Next thing that we do is we want to provide a quick verdict of the sender as well. So typically, let's think about what a human security analyst normally does. First thing that they typically do is they'll go down and they'll dig into the headers, and here are all the headers available. So what they'll do is they'll go into the headers here, and they might look at things like the three authentication mechanisms that we have here in with email. So look at this. First of all, this comes from Outlook.com, right, which is a Microsoft product. So what happens here is it will pass SPF, of course, because Outlook.com have enabled SPF. Of course, DKIM will be enabled too, because Microsoft have enabled that. And of course, it passes DMARC. So in this case, the only three email authentication mechanisms or protocols that we have are useless to me in this case. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to authenticate the sender, but over and above DMARC here. So first of all, we give the security analyst an indication that yes, we did in fact display that red banner. Next thing that we do, we're trying to authenticate, as I say, authenticate the sender over and above DMARC by looking at things like, and there's lots of things that go into this, but we're looking at things like, have we ever seen at a global level, have we ever seen attacks from this email address before, from this domain, perhaps from this geolocated mail server, right? Internal versus external sender. Again, do we pass SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, and so on. So in this case, we've authenticated this sender to say this is a low reputation sender. So let's take a look. Quick verdict of the email itself, quick verdict of the sender. I showed you the email headers. Here's a text representation of the email, right? So you can see the email body. Next thing that we do is we automatically extract the links and attachments, and we will go and analyze those in our tier 1 scanning engines. So let's take a look. So far, IRONSCALES Visual, which is a high reputation scanner. We'll talk about that shortly. Google Web Risk and Google Safe Browsing. Those are the engines that have come back so far. We'll go and take a look at some of those, at some more of those later. But we have about 60 or so different engines that we're using to scan links. And then you'll also see that we've also scanned with Checkpoint, Sandblast, and also the attachment with VirusTotal. So at this stage, there's no indicators of compromise with these, and so far the engines of the URL scanner. If those do come back as malicious, we will automatically remove that email from all affected mailboxes. Now I say all affected mailboxes because if you see here, if you remember, we're connected via API at the mailbox level. And so because we get a notification every time an email lands in the mailbox, we don't need to sweep through potentially thousands of mailboxes in the organization. We already know who's received this email. Okay, so all of this analysis, all of this incident response type forensics and so on, basically our goal here is to allow the security analyst either to provide them an automated verdict or to allow them to make that verdict where it's not immediately apparent. We allow them to make that verdict. So we give them these 3 quick resolution buttons at the top here. And I can do things like perhaps move this email to a junk mail folder, or I can mark it as false positive, send it back to the user and tell them that this is a legitimate email. Or in fact, even after I've deleted this email, it's one click to restore it back in its original form. So what is this? This actually is actually a big deal. When security analysts, sometimes they make mistakes or they want to err on the side of caution. But sometimes security analysts make mistakes and they remove emails, perhaps from multiple mailboxes. It's often more difficult to put the email back in those mailboxes than it is to remove it in the first place. So with IRONSCALES, the cost of that false positive is negligible, because if you remove it from the mailboxes, it's one click to remove it, but it's also one click to put it back in the mailboxes. So this might allow the security analyst to err on the side of caution. So one of the security, or perhaps one of the C-suite reported an email. When it gets reported, we see that it's in all of the executive suite's mailboxes. Well, let's get it out of the mailboxes. Let IRONSCALES do the analysis, and if it turns out to be legitimate, then it's simply one click to put it back in the mailboxes. But in this case, I think it's a phishing attack, right? From all my analysis here, from Themis to my sender fingerprint to the analysis of the links and attachments and the body of the email, I think it's a phishing attack. So keep an eye on the email here in the background. I'm gonna mark it as a phishing attack. Here I get to choose. This is business email compromise, and it's an external imposter, somebody impersonating my CEO, and so I'm going to apply. It now moves it from the open incidents area, moves it to active attacks, and here you can see that it's now been marked as a phishing attack. It has my tags here, and you saw the email disappear out of my mailbox in the background. So not only has it been removed out of my mailbox, I also got a notification. So the end user that reported this notification says, thanks for reporting this email. It was identified as phishing, and it's been deleted from your inbox and everybody else's. Now, not only has it been removed from my mailbox, but it's also been removed from all of those mailboxes with that one click. Now, in my case, that was 3 mailboxes. This could be 300, 3,000. It's one click to take it out of the mailboxes. And once again, it's one click to put it back in the mailboxes. Okay, so let's talk about URL scanning. I showed you how we scan for URLs here, but what we are seeing is an uptick in a certain kind of attack, a certain kind of malicious URL that traditional URL scanners aren't capable of detecting. So let's think about what a URL scanner typically does when they do URL scanning. So the first thing a URL scanner will do is it will go and visit that URL, and it'll take basically a copy of the HTML code that was used to create that page, make a hash of it, and then basically say, you know what, have we ever seen this exact HTML code before? If we've seen it, we've analyzed it before, we'll immediately know whether it's good or bad. If it's good, it's fine. If it's bad, we can remove it. But if we've never seen that code before, then what the URL scanners do is they sit and wait for malicious activity or suspicious activity to come from that web page. And you know, you've all heard of the idea of automated code downloads, you know, viruses downloading in the background automatically, or exploit kit activity, something like that. And that's what these URL scanners are waiting for. But what we're seeing is a new kind of attack that the URL or that web page doesn't download any code, doesn't do anything other than it just sits there and looks like a login page, right? And it waits for somebody to insert credentials. So a page like that, because it's not doing any actual malicious activity, a URL scanner has no way of determining whether that's good or bad. So what we do is we use something called computer vision. And what computer vision does is it basically visits the web page, it'll take a snapshot of that web page, and it will visually look at that page and determine whether it's a login page. If it is a login page, we automatically can detect that, and then we'll automatically be able to detect whether that's actually legitimate login page or whether it's a malicious login page. So let me show you an example of one of those. So basically, our visual similarity detections, here's one right here. Let's go and take a look at this. So you'll see that this incident here looks just much like that incident that we were just working on. However, here, instead of being reported by an end user, you'll see this was reported by IRONSCALES Visual Scanner. And it was also resolved by IRONSCALES Visual Scanner. So take a look at this. First reported on the, just remember this, 20th of November, 11:05 a.m. Okay, so what happened here? Well, an email landed in this mailbox on the 20th of November at 11:05 a.m. As soon as it landed in that mailbox, IRONSCALES Visual Scanner both reported it and resolved it. Now, what does this mean? Well, remember I showed you in the engines here that IRONSCALES Visual Scanner was one of our engines. Now let's take a look at this. So here again, you can see the scan date was 20th of November at 11:05 a.m. Now one thing that we do is when a scan comes back with no indicators of compromise, we don't just leave it there. we actually continue to rescan that link periodically. And this is to protect against delayed weaponization of URLs. Think about it. When an attacker is sending in an attack to an organization, it's probably likely that that URL is going to get scanned on its way in, perhaps by a secure email gateway. So what they do is they don't weaponize that link immediately. They send it in, the URL scanner looks at it and says, yep, this is fine, delivers it to the mailbox. In an hour's time or a day's time, whatever, the attacker can then go and weaponize that URL. Now they have a malicious link sitting in the inbox. So what we do is if we scan it once, we'll continue to scan it just to determine whether or not that thing turns malicious or not. So take a look at this. I already showed you that IRONSCALES Visual Scanner scanned this instantaneously and instantaneously came back with a malicious verdict. Note here, all of these other engines, and here's the full list of the engines here. All of these, we kept on rescanning these for a few days afterwards, and they still came back with no indicators of compromise. Now, these are all the VirusTotal multi-AV engines, but you can see here, Google Safe Browsing, also a full 3 days later, still thought this was not a malicious link. Bitdefender, same deal, still thought this was no indicators of compromise at this link. IRONSCALES Visual detected this immediately as soon as it landed in the inbox. Why did we think that that was a malicious link? Here's what we saw when we visited that page, right? So the computer vision looked at this page and saw that this looks like a fake Office 365 page. Now let me show you something else here. When we visit these pages, what happens is, in order for the attackers to bypass these URL scanning engines, what they'll do is they'll make changes. Remember I said they make changes to the web page or to the HTML. And what they'll do is they basically keep changing that HTML slightly. So what they might do is they might make it slightly darker, slightly lighter. They might blur the logo. They might move the box around a little bit, something like this. They might use an old logo, an older box. So here you can see are a few examples that individually each look pretty good. Each actually look really good in terms of looking like an Office 365 login page. But as you can see here, each one of them slightly differs every time. So these are the kind of techniques that these attackers are using in order to try and bypass these traditional URL scanners. And again, IRONSCALES Visual Scanner detects those straight away. Now then, let's go back to my resolution center again, and let's talk about something else here. So I showed you how we help the security team respond to one of these incidents as quick as possible. But what we saw is globally, in the case of where an attack is trending around the world, what we saw is that we might see security analysts from different companies often responding to the same incident, sometimes within seconds of each other or within minutes. And we wanted to fix that. They're duplicating efforts. So we wanted to fix that in a way that the current centralized threat intelligence model doesn't do. So let's talk about that. If you think about how security vendors typically update their products, and this may be firewalls, secure email gateways, URL scanners, whatever. Typically what they do is they have some threat analysts sitting at the headquarters location, and these threat analysts are busy basically writing signatures or writing protections for their products based on the priorities that they set. How many of these attacks are they seeing? And they'll prioritize these, they'll work on the signatures, and periodically they'll push these signature updates out to all of their products, right? And they may do it once a day, once a week, whatever. They don't do that in real time. So what we did is we came up with this basically a decentralized real-time threat detection engine or service. And what this basically does is, think about it's basically a peer-to-peer mechanism of updating security analysts with the latest real-time threat intelligence. So for instance, let's take a look at this one, for instance. This email came in. Now then you can see that this is, so instead of being reported by a user, this is first reported by Federation. Now Federation is that decentralized real-time threat detection service. And again, first reported at 3:54 a.m. So let's take a look at this one. So 3:54 a.m., this email landed in this mailbox right here, 3:54 a.m. As soon as it landed in the mailbox, Federation said, I know about this email and I'm reporting it. Now, what does Federation know about this email? Well, it knows that first time we saw that email globally was the 20th of November. And since then, 424 other companies under IRONSCALES protection have seen an instance of this email. Now, they won't have seen this exact email because, you know, there's our email addresses and so on, and you know, the emails differ. So it's, and the video name here, you know, there's file names that differ, but they've basically seen an instance of an email that looks very similar to this. 424 companies have seen it. 271 security analysts have already analyzed this email. They've already marked it as phishing, and they are actively purging this attack from their mailboxes going forward. So let's take a look at this. So 17 have marked it as spam. Okay. 136 is not classified. So what does that mean? It means that 136 analysts have not yet made a classification. They haven't made a decision on this. Now, that could mean that, you know, again, this information is shared in real time. So this attack might be trending. They might be looking at this incident just like we're looking at it, except they haven't made their decision yet. So as each one of those security analysts makes their decision and passes verdict, so these numbers will update in real time. So, but basically they're all seeing this, that so far 64% of the decisions that have been already made, 64% of those I'm sorry, 64% of the companies that have seen this, some of them have already made those decisions. 271 of those have marked it as a phishing attack. Okay, so let's also take a look at that. So based on this threat intelligence, we can immediately remediate this email. And you can see here how we also then, therefore, keep protecting the organization against this attack on an ongoing basis. So we don't have to go and research, you know, we don't have to go and search for this email again. So we're not a search and delete engine. What we're doing is we're intelligently protecting the organization against this attack in the future. So here you can see that was one subject line on the 28th of November. However, on the 10th of December, at 2:20 a.m., this mailbox basically got what's basically the same attack, but subject lines changed slightly, right? To bypass these signature matching protections. So we protected it and immediately removed it. Notice that the email address was changed. The subject line has changed. The time, these emails landed in the mailboxes, you know, on the 10th of December, but they started coming in, I don't know, maybe about once an hour. And here you can see, as soon as that email landed in the mailbox, look at the time there. As soon as it lands in the mailbox, it automatically got deleted based on our classification earlier. So that's Federation, or that's our, and again, what Federation is this decentralized, real-time threat sharing. So earlier, I said we'd talk about Themis in a little while. So let's think about Themis. So Themis, as I said, is our virtual security analyst, and she analyzes emails just like a human security analyst does. Now, let's think about a human security analyst, right? How does a human security analyst get their career experience, if you will? How do they become proficient at what they do? Well, they sit and they analyze emails over time, over their career, and quite often they learn from a mentor, so somebody that they trust, a senior security analyst perhaps, and they learn from this mentor, and then over time, you know, their employer might say, okay, you know, we're watching you, we'll let you do certain things on your own, but we still need, you know, the senior analyst to make final decisions and so on. And ultimately, they unleash that security analyst and let them make their own determinations. And Themis is no different. So Themis is, as I say, a virtual security analyst. She's an AI-driven security analyst. And what's her career experience? Well, we've been doing federation for probably right at about 5 years now. And so there's millions of decisions, millions of data points in federation that Themis has to draw on. So she's been watching the thousands of human security analysts that make up the federation community. She's been watching how they make those decisions. And so she mimics the decisions that these human security analysts make. And so therefore, those thousands of security analysts are her mentors. So initially, what we allow Themis to do is we've unleashed Themis on spam. So we let her, if she thinks something's spam, we'll let her auto-classify that and move it to a junk mail folder perhaps. But what we're doing here for phishing attacks and false positives, we're actually going, currently she's just giving us this confidence level of what she thinks the classification is. But here, shortly in the next couple of one of the next couple of releases, we're actually going to give Themis full autonomy, let her become a fully fledged member of the security team, and let her take action on these. So I'm not quite sure how the user interface is going to play out, but just imagine something along the lines of you can set a slider here, or choose a threshold where you can say, you know what, if Themis is more than 70% confident of her verdict, then let her take action, right? I don't want the security team looking at incidents where there's a very high confidence level that it's a phishing attack. I would rather the security analysts work on something where, Themis is not so sure. So let Themis, where she's highly confident, let her make the decision, let her remove the email, and we'll. So therefore, Themis can handle all of these incidents, and perhaps, even this one. So we want to get to a point where, so out of all of these emails here, Themis will have responded to them. So here's one, 60%. So in this case, this is one that perhaps we want to see the human security analyst to look at. But all of these others, we want Themis to take action. And we're tracking Themis's accuracy, and currently Themis is about 94% accurate or so. So in other words, if Themis makes 100 decisions, she'll be right 94% of or 94 out of 100 times, right? So it's very easy to go back and again, the cost of that false positive. So if she removes something she shouldn't have, the cost of restoring that to the mailboxes in its original form is negligible. Okay, so I've been through pretty much the entire system. I'm going to show you a little bit of the I'm going to show you a little bit of the reporting capabilities here. So let's take a look. This is what we call the mitigation dashboard, and so basically the way to read this is to say over the last 6 months, my dashboard's handled about 1,300 odd incidents. And so what kind of attacks were those? What kind of incidents were those? What is IRONSCALES doing for me? So here you can see this piece here. This is the advanced malware and URL protection that we were talking about earlier. So this is basically a signature matching engine and a sandboxing engine, right? So this is looking at links. This is scanning URLs. This is sandboxing of attachments, so detonating them in a virtual environment with our tier 1 scanning engines and sandbox environments in order to return verdicts of malicious or no indicators of compromise. IRONSCALES Visual Scanner, as you saw earlier, this is looking for those fake login pages. So this piece here, we've had 84 incidents related to advanced malware and URL protection. Now here in the middle here, this piece, we've had just short of 500 mailbox level anomaly detections. Okay, so this is that business email compromise piece that I was showing earlier, where we have display name impersonations, exact name spoofs, domain lookalikes, those kind of things. Again, that business email compromise type of attack. And then over here, on the right-hand side here, we've had incidents reported by our end users by pressing the button, but we've also had incidents that have been raised in our system because of that decentralized real-time threat detection service that basically involves the entire IRONSCALES community called Federation. So out of those 1,300 odd incidents, turns out that about half of them, about 670 or so, have ultimately been determined to be phishing attacks. And that's either by us automatically detecting malicious content, both in here and those reported by our users and Federation, but also by the security analyst pressing that mark as phishing button. And if you remember, one click in the dashboard, one-click remediation removes potentially multiple emails. So here you can see that 673 clicks, if you will, or 673 incidents have removed, at this stage, 24,000 emails. And these incidents that have been marked as phishing are continuing to protect us if those attacks should come into our mailboxes again. All right, so let's look at what we call below the fold numbers. So here you can see which departments are being targeted the most, which employees are being targeted the most, who's doing the reporting, right? And sometimes you might see that, for instance, Adam is our most targeted employee. However, other users are perhaps reporting emails that are protecting Adam as well, right? If they're involved in multiple mailboxes. And then, if you remember, what I said is our second goal, and I guess ultimately this is really our only goal, if you will. But I said our second goal was to help the security team respond to those incidents as quick as possible. And so here you can see we break out how long it takes each security analyst to resolve an incident. Now, bear in mind, this is from initial detection to full remediation across the entire organization. Remember, I said we're allowing Themis to act on spam emails. So in other words, when an email is reported into the dashboard that Themis thinks is spam, she can immediately remediate that in under a second. Now remember, when we make Themis an autonomous member of the security team, she'll be able to respond to phishing attacks as well above that threshold in that same kind of time frame. And so we break it out per analyst here, and then we also provide a median across the entire organization. So at a high level, that's basically the dashboard and the platform overview. So please, if you have any questions, please let us know. Reach out to either your local partner or your IRONSCALES representative, and we'll be happy to engage further. Thank you.